All right, here's question number 5 from the review. First step here, we can go ahead and put this into f of x into factored form. So we want to factor each of these trinomials, numerator and denominator. So this is what the quadratics factor down to. The numerator is 2x plus 1 times x minus 2. The denominator is x plus 3 times x minus 1. So horizontal asymptotes, remember that tells us end behavior. So the way we find that is by looking at our leading coefficients. So our greatest power in the numerator and denominator is both degree 2. So we're looking at that. So if we were to take 2x squared divided by 1x squared, that gives us y equals 2. So that is your horizontal asymptote. And that tells us our end behavior. So as x gets really small, f of x is going to approach 2. And as x gets really large, f of x is going to approach 2 as well. Okay, so at this time we can go ahead and graph that horizontal asymptote. And a horizontal asymptote just looks like this. It's a dotted line at y equals 2. Okay. Next up are our vertical asymptotes. And remember where your vertical asymptotes come from. They come from the zeros of your denominator. So that means if x equals negative 3, it's undefined. And if at x equals positive 1, this is undefined. So those are your vertical asymptotes. So anything that makes your denominator 0 is going to make the overall function undefined. So at this point, we can go ahead and graph those. So go to x equals negative 3. And x equals positive 1. And as a reminder, your function can cross your horizontal asymptote. It cannot cross these vertical ones because it can never equal that. So that's what gives us our domain. Notice here, if you look at your graph, you're kind of, if you want to look at it, you have lane 1, lane 2, lane 3. Lane 1 is all of the graph that's there. Lane 2 is the graph that's here, and the lane 3 is the graph that's here, okay? When thinking about this as lane 1, 2, and 3, you have nothing on what's creating those lanes, which is your vertical asymptotes, okay? So your domain is going to go from negative infinity to negative 3. Then you have a lane from negative 3 to 1. Then you have another lane from 1 to positive infinity, okay? So that's what gives us our domain. So vertical asymptotes give you your domain. Your horizontal asymptote tells you your end behavior. So moving on, x-intercepts, those are your zeros of your numerator. So if you set 2x plus 1 equal to 0, you get x equals negative 1/2. And if you set x minus 2 equal to 0, you get x equals 2. So we can also plot that right now. So negative 1/2 and then 2, 0. All right, next up is our y-intercept. And remember how we get that? That's just when you plug in 0 for x. So if you have two constants, it's just your constant divided by your constant. So in this case, it's negative 2 divided by negative 3. So that's 0, 2/3. And we can go ahead and plot that here. And if it's easier to help these show up, we can go over both of them in a darker color. So you have 0, 2/3, you have your negative 1/2, 0, and you have your 2, 0. So those are your 3 points right now. And then it says other points. So at this point, we don't have any points in that first lane. So what we can do is plug in like negative 4 into our function and get an output. So if we plug in negative 4 into our function, our output is 8.4. So we'll go ahead and plot that. So negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're about right here. And what that's telling us is telling us that our graph is going to be up in that region, okay? Because for the most part, especially in those outside, like lane 1 and 3, you're either going to be above your horizontal asymptote or below. In the middle, it can cross, so that's where you do have to be a little bit more careful. So over in lane 3, that's telling us that our graph is here, okay? Now in lane 2 in the middle, My guess is it's going to cross our x-axis, and reason being is because we know that our function approaches these vertical asymptotes. So without looking at the graph, this is my assumption, is that our graph is going to look something like this. Okay, and what you'd want to do is confirm that, and you can confirm that by plugging in like 0.5. So if we do hit trace 0.5 on our calculator, your output is 1.7. So you are about here. If you did 0.75, you're at 3, so you're above that horizontal asymptote. So that's how you definitely know that you have crossed that horizontal, and it's going to approach infinity as it gets closer and closer to 1 from the right. Okay, and if you were to try, let's say, -2, your output's -4, so you know that that's for sure going down. 1, 2, 3, it's actually down here. So remember that first attempt at that graph was me just kind of guessing based on my points and based on knowing that my functions approach those vertical asymptotes as they get closer. I don't know why this isn't erasing. Okay, don't know. And so there's your function. Okay, where does it change signs? Okay, so that means where does your function go from positive to negative? So think about if you were looking at your table, where would your outputs change from positive to negative, negative to positive? And that's happening, if you look at your graph, it's happening at your vertical asymptote, because notice it's positive. Then as you go to the right of that vertical asymptote, it's now negative. It changes sign right here at our x-intercept. It's changing up here, positive to negative, so at that vertical asymptote. And then again, it goes from negative to positive at the x-intercepts. So it's changing sign here. Pretty much your only possibility is at vertical asymptotes and x-intercepts. They don't always happen, but that is your only possibility. Okay, the last thing is, where is f of x greater than 0? Look at your graph. Look at your graph. Where is it? I'm going to zoom in. Where is it above the x-axis? It's all those places. And then where is it below? It's all those places. Okay, that one's a little bit easier to see. That's all it's asking. Where is it above the x-axis? Where is it below? Okay, so that's all you're needing to fill in here. So it's above. So it's during your lanes. And again, so they either change spots in the lanes or the x-intercepts. So it's above, starting at negative infinity until it reaches the vertical asymptote. Then it starts to go above at your x-intercept of -1/2 until your vertical asymptote. And then it's back above, starting with your next x-intercept, and then forever. Where is it below? Your first vertical asymptote until the first x-intercept. And then it's below from your second vertical asymptote until your next x-intercept. Okay, so that is putting everything together with graphing. Okay, if you have questions, please reach out to your teacher before your test on Thursday.